Hello, welcome, and thank you for watching Session 8, where we'll continue our discussion on race. As a way of helping you to understand the kind of hatred that we discussed in Session 7, and that can be generated by feelings of racism and bigotry, let me relate to you a story or two about my personal experiences with some of those who have such feelings. There are two instances that I'll relate. The first involved the time when I was attending a nearby university, and I happened to overhear a number of white students talking about a problem that they felt had come about as a result of a young African American student, a young lady, entering a campus beauty contest. They didn't want her to be elected, and they had been concerned about the large African American student population voting for her, and that she would be elected. One of the students laughed as he bragged about how the matter had been resolved. He said, "We just convinced another African American girl that she should enter too. We were able to persuade her to enter, and as a result, the African American vote was split, and neither of those two girls won." Another instance of divide and conquer. Sadly, things like this are still happening today. There was also a later time during the 60s when I was traveling through several of the southern states, and it was during this trip that I saw for the first time in my life drinking fountains and restrooms with signs which identified them as being for use by colored, in quotes, or white, in quotes. Excuse me. Even back at that time, these signs deeply troubled and saddened me. I knew even then, in my heart of hearts, even as a young man, that it just wasn't right for people to be treated in that way. At one particular point in the trip, I had stopped for gasoline and to take a brief break from driving. Several men at the place where I had stopped were talking about their very strong feelings against African American people. One of them made it plain to all present that he had dynamite in a shed at home, and that he would, without hesitation, use it to blow up the local school before he would allow minority children to attend there with his children. Now that is the level of blind, illogical hatred that existed then, that had existed for many years before that time, and that still exists in the hearts of far too many people, not only in the South but all over the United States, even today. One of the biggest differences now, as opposed to then, is that the hatred tends to manifest in more subtle and less vocal ways, less obvious ways, because the people with those feelings have learned that it's not wise and certainly not politically correct to allow their feelings to become apparent to all those around them. They simply voice their same feelings more quietly now, under their breath, or with their closest friends of like mind, and therefore the impression was left with outsiders that things have truly changed and everything is okay now. In that regard, however, you need to realize that everything is definitely not okay now. This has been made very obvious since the election of the United States of America's first African American president. Although his election is proof that we as a people and as a country, thanks to Dr. King and others like him, have come a very long way since the decade of the 60s. There's also more than ample evidence since President Obama's election of the fact that racism and bigotry in the United States are far from being put behind us. What a sad thing to have to say about such a great nation. Please understand that I'm not trying to say that there have been no real changes or that all people in the southern states or elsewhere are filled with racial hatred. I recognize that just over the course of my lifetime, there have been a great many positive changes regarding the manner in which we deal with the question and the problems of race, and as just indicated, the election of President Barack Obama is proof of that. But there are still very serious problems. During the 50s, as I was growing up, our family moved to a larger city where I attended high school. I came into contact with people of many races, colors, backgrounds, and cultures. Later, when I entered the workforce, I had relocated to a still larger city where I once again came into daily contact with even larger numbers of people of different races, colors, cultures, and backgrounds. Over a period of time, I came to realize that all these people who had seemed to be so different when I was much younger were in reality not so very different at all. They have the same basic needs, and in their heart they feel the same love for children and family, and they want and need the same opportunities that are available to the rest of us. There were and are people of many races, colors, and cultures whom I cherish as friends. There were and are people of different races, colors, and cultures that I don't particularly enjoy being around, but that has to do with their character and their habits, not their race or their color or their culture. My personal experiences regarding race and culture differences have been more involved with African Americans, but I know that the facts are no different in areas where Hispanic or Asian or Native American or other races and cultures are more prominent. These truths go across background, race, color, religion, and culture. Some of us may not like it or understand it, but as God's children, we're all truly brothers and sisters. And the sooner we begin to recognize, understand, and acknowledge that, the better off we and our country and our world will be. Continuing, we can see then that beginning in the 60s, in what seemed like a relatively short period of time, integration as well as equal treatment and equal opportunity for minorities, long overdue, had become rights that were beginning to be enforced by the federal government. Many in the Democrat Party's constituency in the country, and especially in the South, began to reevaluate their loyalties to the Democrat Party. Sadly, far too many of them decided that if being a Democrat meant giving African Americans the same rights as whites, then they would begin to move politically to the right, knowing that there would already be large numbers of people there of like mind to make them feel welcome. Far too many of those in high leadership positions on the extreme right, always ready to create division or to take advantage of a division that occurs within the population, welcomed them with open arms, as that part of the population began to vote more and more conservatively in increasing numbers. They will vehemently deny that they vote in such ways because of racial prejudice. They will talk about numerous reasons that they use to justify the way they vote, and that may be so for great numbers of them. But for far too many, those old feelings are still very much present, simmering, and in the hearts of some, boiling just below the surface. Many years have passed, and as already indicated, a number of the problems of race have improved greatly, thanks in large part to Dr. King and others. Some have improved significantly, as shown in the 2008 election, and in numerous other areas, but still not nearly as much as appearances might indicate. The undercurrent of racism that exists in this country is still one of America's greatest problems. The underlying hatred that fosters these feelings is so strong because there are still some people who insist on hating certain segments of the population. They may hate someone for any number of reasons, but those of different races and colors seem to most often to become the objects of such hatred. Those who have that kind of hatred seem to prefer hate rather than understanding and brotherhood. Perhaps they use their hatred to lower, in their estimation, the worth of the person who is the object of their hatred, somehow in order to try to raise themselves to some desired higher level. And if so, then perhaps in some strange way that may work for them. But I can assure you that it is not admired in any way by most of those around them who observe their hatred, nor is it in harmony with God's plans for humanity. We must realize that the question of race and color is a key question in this country. By that I mean if we approach and deal with it properly, it can open the doors for greater harmony and brotherly love among all of our people. If we do not approach and deal with it properly, it can cause those doors to be locked to us all for many years to come. Nothing affecting the majority of people in this country should be instituted without carefully considering the effect that it will have on the matter of race, and what effect the matter of race will have on it. The importance of this should never be underestimated. You can make a difference, even if it's only in your own heart, and in truth, you should make the necessary effort to make a difference, especially in your own heart. the benefit to you will be far greater than you might think. As the years of our lives unfold like the petals of a rose, so too does the human heart open itself to thoughts of God. One result of this is that my feelings and my thinking have rightfully become more and more inclusive as the years have gone by. There's no doubt in my mind that many other people's hearts and minds have also changed for the better. Obviously, I'm not saying that there is no more prejudice or hatred or even misunderstanding. That would be naive. There are large numbers of people who do not feel the same as I now feel because they have not been taught or have not learned or made the effort to learn them otherwise. You may have noticed that I used the word taught, and I did so for a reason. These prejudices are learned. They do not occur naturally. They are learned from those around us as we grow up. However, I and many others have discovered a very important fact, that those things which we have learned while growing up can be unlearned and replaced with correct information when and if they are later found to be an error. I'm saying that a great many people are working hard to change in order to rid themselves of such feelings, and they are doing so with varying degrees of success. Many of them have been able to overcome those negative feelings completely. I applaud those who have succeeded in that endeavor, as well as those who are still struggling and working hard to rise above old feelings of racism, bigotry, and hatred. Neither racism and bigotry nor their rhetoric or hatred have any substantive value or place in today's society, nor should they have ever had any substantive value or place in any society. That's all that we'll consider on this subject for now. In our next session, number 9, we'll continue to discuss from a material world point of view another one of the areas that have been successfully used to divide us as a people and as a society. We'll start our next session with the question of our beginnings. Was it evolution or creation? Thank you for watching this session.